How do you learn to trust again after being burned that badly? I was in love. She was my wife. My best friend, or so I thought. Lauren and I had been married for 6 years when I found out it was all an illusion. At the time, we were living in Portland. She'd just taken a new job as an internal auditor for the city's largest real estate firm. I worked in sales for a national machine tool manufacturer. My clients were mostly scattered across the suburbs and remote corners of Western Oregon, so I wasn't often downtown. But that day, I happened to be in the city center and found myself with a 2-hour gap between meetings. I called Lauren, hoping to surprise her with lunch. She sounded rushed and distracted. Said she was buried in a spreadsheet and had an important meeting that afternoon. No time, maybe another day. Disappointed but not suspicious, I went to Jake's, ordered crawfish étouffée and a beer. I was halfway through my meal, lost in the warm richness of the sauce, when I started eavesdropping on the table behind me. 4 women, all talking at once. I'd always marveled at how women could carry on like that, layers of conversation, overlapping topics, and somehow they all understood each other. Then something cut through the noise. A single name. Lauren Brooks is messing with Carter Hayes? It stopped me cold. That's my wife's name. Lauren, her professional name. Friends and family call her Lori, and Brooks my last name. I'm Ethan Brooks, by the way. The other women fell silent, like someone had flipped a switch. "How are you so sure?" one of them asked. "I was in her office when her husband called," the first woman said. She brushed him off, said she was too busy to go to lunch. 5 minutes later, Carter pokes his head in and asks if she's ready. She says yes, nods, and then glances at me with this guilty look. I felt something collapse inside me. They kept going. Didn't take Carter long to sink his teeth into another married woman, huh? Lauren's only been at the office a month, and it's been, 2 months since Heidi Johnson left after her husband found out about her affair with Carter. Can you imagine? A mom of 2 preschoolers falling for that guy? Well, it's not just the charm. He's got those icy blue eyes, that Ryan Gosling thing going on, and apparently, a pause for dramatic effect, he's packing some serious heat. They all burst into laughter. I'd heard enough. I dropped cash on the table and left. I don't even remember walking to the car. My mind was buzzing, heart pounding, trying to find a rational way to disprove what I'd just heard. But deep down, I knew. Still, I needed proof. Gossip wasn't enough, not for what was coming. I called her office later that day, disguising my voice as a cold call salesman. The front desk admin was polite, told me. Mrs. Brooks wasn't in, but she'd be back by 2 o'clock. I hung up. Saturday in the car, my hand was shaking. When Lauren came home that evening, I tried my best to act normal. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, apologized for missing dinner, said she'd had a crazy day and wanted to take a bath before we ate. A bath. Not a shower, too obvious. No, she was smarter than that. A soak in the tub meant no telltale signs, no water rushing over skin that wasn't mine. "Mind making something light?" she asked, wine glass already in hand as she disappeared into the master bath. Sure. Of course. Why not? I threw together a salad and a tray of cheese and crackers. My hands moved like they belonged to someone else. Then I walked toward the bathroom. Not to talk. Not yet. Just to listen. I undressed slowly in our bedroom, then walked straight into the bathroom completely naked. Lauren jumped like she'd seen a ghost. The wine glass in her hand sloshed. "Ethan, what the hell are you trying to scare me to death?" I gave her a half smile. "If you remember, Lauren, I live here too. Just thought we could share the hot water." She blinked twice. Her eyes flicked to the side, just briefly. It was her tell. She didn't know she had one, and I never told her. But every time she lied, she either blinked twice or waited just a bit too long to answer, like she had to rehearse it. "I was just getting out, actually," she said, standing and reaching for a towel. "I'm starving. Is dinner ready?" Absolutely starving, she meant to say. Lauren always added that word absolutely when she was flustered and trying to sound casual. Before she could wrap herself up completely, I subtly glanced her over. No bite marks, no scratches, nothing obvious. I tried to see her lower half, but she turned too quickly. Still, the water in the tub made me think, what if it carried traces? I even considered taking a sample to test, but realized I had no clue how to do that without seeming insane. That night, I downloaded a self-published guide on Kindle called The Amateur Detective: How to Catch a Cheating Spouse. Took me 2 hours to finish the basics. I was ready. The next morning, while Lauren was in the shower, I got to work. First, I checked her calendar on her phone. She'd blocked out 2 hours the day before noon to 2 o'clock with the vague note, "Work through lunch." I scrolled back. Same note, same time, the previous Thursday. Subtle, but not invisible. Next, I downloaded a tracking app onto her phone. Piece of cake. I also checked my phone and found out she'd installed a similar app to monitor me. Cute. I deleted hers off my device. No reason to tip my hand too early, but I kept the app on mine. Might come in handy. Every morning after that, I checked her calendar. Tuesday popped out. Another work through lunch block from noon to 2. Perfect. After breakfast, I headed to my home office, pretended to work for an hour, then grabbed a cheap phone from Walmart. I forwarded my regular number to the new one and left my main phone on my desk. If she checked, it would show me safely 20 miles away. At 11:45, I was parked outside a Starbucks downtown across from her office tower. At noon sharp, she walked out. Right beside him. The guy looked exactly like the Type GQ jawline, cocky stride, hair like it belonged in a commercial. Carter Hayes, I assumed. Mr. Ryan Gosling clone. They didn't even notice me. Too busy holding hands, all wrapped up in each other. They walked a block down to the lobby of the Vintage Hotel. I didn't follow them inside. I had almost 2 hours, and I didn't need to see them go upstairs to know what was happening. So I crossed the street to the bank. First stop, closed our joint credit card accounts. Second, shut down the home equity line. We each had personal cards too, so she'd find out soon enough, but by then, it wouldn't matter. I called my company's legal team and got a referral for a divorce attorney. Booked the first appointment available for the next morning. Then, with about 30 minutes to spare, I returned to the hotel lobby, Saturday down with a copy of the Wall Street Journal, pretending to read while watching the elevators. Right on schedule they came down. I stood and walked straight toward them. Lauren's eyes met mine and she froze. "Ethan," she stammered. "Oh my God." Carter moved between us, puffing his chest like he was about to protect her. "Whoa, man, let's all stay calm here," he said, holding out a hand like a traffic cop. "Let's not make a scene." Wrong move. Lauren must have forgotten to mention the boxing classes. Because I didn't make a scene. I made contact. Carter didn't even have time to brace. My fist landed square in his gut just under the solar plexus. He folded like a tent, dropped to his knees, wheezing. Lauren just stood there, mouth moving like a stunned fish, speechless. Before she could say a word, I said it for her. "Maybe it's best you don't come home tonight, Lauren. Maybe not ever." Then I walked out. Unfortunately, I hadn't even made it through the front door of our house before a squad car pulled up. They didn't even knock, just cuffed me and read me my rights. Carter had pressed charges. So I spent the night in a cold cell at the Multnomah County Jail, booked for assault. But luck was still on my side. By the next day, I was out thanks to some creative testimony. Turns out, the front desk clerk at the Vintage Hotel had told the responding officers that Carter looked like he was about to strike me. Said he'd raised his hand to Lauren right before I stepped in. It wasn't exactly the truth, but it wasn't technically a lie either. Let's just say she wasn't the type to shed tears over a man who made a hobby out of seducing married women. When I got home, it was clear Lauren had been there. Most of the small valuables were gone along with my father's watch, the one he left me when he died. That stung more than anything. Her clothes, gone. Good riddance. I took a shower, put on a clean shirt, and met with my lawyer. Over the next 3 months, everything fell into place. The assault charge? Dropped. No evidence. And thanks to the clerk's statement, I came out looking more like a wronged husband than an aggressor. I refused to speak to Lauren directly. Everything went through the attorneys. She tried to reach out. "Can't we talk?" she'd asked through her lawyer. "No," I said, flat final. She pushed for counseling. I refused. That's when she flipped. She wanted half the community assets, child support even though we had no kids. Her list was long. But my lawyer was better. Even in a no-fault state, the judge was swayed. My lawyer made a few key points. First, Lauren had agreed to traditional vows forsaking all others. I had expected fidelity. She failed. Second, we had testimony from a coworker about the lunch she ditched with me to have a rendezvous with Carter. Third, when the story came out about her taking my father's watch while I was in jail, you could feel the whole courtroom freeze. Even Lauren's attorney cringed when that detail was read aloud. I got the divorce. And the watch. We split what we built together. She walked with her half, but not a penny more. No alimony. Then, just before the final documents were signed, she asked to meet with me. Out of morbid curiosity, I agreed. We sat down in her lawyer's office. She tried to pour it on thick how much she loved me, how sorry she was, how Carter had trapped her, how we were such a strong couple, with so much potential. I let her ramble. Then I interrupted. "Tell me about the others," I said coldly. She blinked. Once. Twice. "Ethan, since we've been together, I've never been with another man. I swear. Absolutely honest." There it was, absolutely. I stood. "Goodbye, Lauren." She looked stunned, but said nothing. 3 weeks later, I got a CD in the mail. No note. No return address. Just a disc. I shouldn't have watched it, but I did. It opened with Lauren, fully dressed, staring straight into the camera. "Ethan," she said, "this is for you. Eat your heart out." Then came 15 minutes of her and Carter. No mystery, no question, just her proud, smiling, putting on a show like it was her big screen debut. And it was hot, I won't lie. I seriously considered sending copies to her parents, her boss, her friends. Instead, I played it smarter. I created a private Tumblr account, never posted the video, but let her think I might. Then I sent her an email. No threats, just a warning. More like that show up anywhere. And maybe your dad ends up seeing them first. She responded fast, apologized, claimed she was still hurt about how things ended, said she only made the video to make me jealous. She promised to stop. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed her. Because she looked scared. And she should have been. I'm a pretty stoic guy. I think most people who know me would even describe me as a little cold. After the divorce and even after watching that goddamn video, I didn't cry. I didn't get blackout drunk for a week. I didn't think about eating a bullet. But I was sad. Really sad. Because Lauren hadn't just been my wife for 6 years. She'd been my best friend. And that betrayal stripped me of something bigger than just a relationship. It stripped away my ability to trust people. And once that cracks, it starts showing up everywhere. It's like a virus. You stop believing people have good intentions. You start seeing dishonesty everywhere in small things. When a bartender gives you change for a 10 instead of a 20, you don't think it's a mistake. You assume it's a scam. When a salesperson stumbles over a price, you assume they're lying. Little things like that started turning me into a cynic. And my job didn't help. Sales is already a brutal environment, cutthroat, competitive, full of liars and sharks. Add in a personal betrayal like that, and you start building walls thick enough to stop a tank. When it came to women, I stuck to a routine: bars, surface-level conversation, one-night stands. It was a lonely existence, but it felt safer than the alternative. Then I met Elise. About a year after the divorce, I was at a dinner party hosted by some clients. Elise stood out immediately: blonde hair, green eyes, a body that would have made the cover of a Victoria's Secret catalog. But more than that, she had a presence, a warmth. She wasn't just beautiful, she was alive, laughing, engaging, charming without effort, the kind of woman you want your parents to meet. And I was hooked. That night, I turned on every ounce of charm I had. I could have sold snow to an Eskimo. I told stories, made people laugh, even pitched Mexican beer like my life depended on it. But in reality, I was trying to sell myself to her. As we were leaving, I walked over to her and asked if I could take her to dinner next weekend. "How can I say no?" she said with a smile. "You worked so hard to make me say yes. That kind of effort deserves a reward." "Was it that obvious?" I asked. "Yeah, but I think it's cute. I also asked our host about you. She said you've got potential. So, next Friday?" We went out that Friday, then the next, and the one after that. After 2 months, we made it official exclusive. We kept separate places, but we were together 4 or 5 nights a week. All my friends adored her. More importantly, I was falling in love again. And for once, I thought maybe, just maybe, someone was falling for me too. Sex started right after we agreed to be exclusive. I won't go into detail because a gentleman doesn't kiss and tell, but it was, hands down, the best sex I'd ever had. She was confident, open, fun. We were good together, in and out of bed. I started thinking, maybe this was it, my way back, my shot at real happiness. And then it started to unravel. The first red flag came one morning when we both took the day off work. It was early. We were lounging, drinking beer, laughing about nothing. Then Elise's phone rang. She looked at the screen and silenced it. Now, that might seem like nothing, but Elise was the type who always answered, or at least texted back with a talk later. This time, nothing. Just a quiet dismissal. I felt that twist in my gut, the one I'd felt before. That night, after she fell asleep, I grabbed her phone. I didn't want to, but I also didn't want to be blindsided again. I went through her call history. 3:30 a.m. missed call from someone labeled JR. I kept scrolling. Lots of calls. Too many. Then I checked her calendar. Meeting with JR. Next day, 1:15 p.m. Just like with Lauren, it was time to dust off the playbook. Cap, sunglasses, a rock in my right shoe to slightly change my walk. I wasn't going to be the guy who got played again. Thursday afternoon, I set up across the street from Elise's office, in a sandwich shop. Around 1:10, she walked out alone and headed north up Broadway. She entered the Moreau Hotel. I waited a minute, then followed. There they were, at the front desk, Elise and a guy in a navy suit, smiling, laughing, way too comfortable. I felt like I was going to puke. I walked up. My voice barely stayed steady. "You're cheating on me, you lying." She turned to me, and the look on her face? She looked like I was a stranger, like she didn't recognize me at all. She looked at me like I'd shot her, like I'd pointed a loaded weapon at her soul. The man she was with turned and asked, "Who is this?" Before Elise could answer, another guy approached wearing a Moreau Hotel name tag. He looked at the three of us with confusion written all over his face. But before anyone could say a word, Elise spun around and bolted out of the lobby. It all happened fast, but not so fast that I didn't catch the name on that second guy's badge, Paul Merrick, catering manager. I looked back at the first man, the one Elise had walked in with. He broke the silence. "I'm guessing you're Ethan. I'm Nathan Ford, the guy Elise hired to plan your surprise 30th birthday party, which, congratulations, I think you just managed to ruin." I just stood there, nothing left to say. That was the last time I saw Elise. A week later, I opened my front door and found a box sitting on my porch. Inside were all the things I'd left at her: apartment shirts, books, a few kitchen things. On top of it all, a note. "I don't want anything I left at your house. Give it to charity. Elise." For 6 months after that, I drifted. I worked. I ate. I slept. I functioned. That's about it. No dates. No drinking binges. Just a low, constant ache. Then one afternoon, I decided to get out of the house. The annual Portland Craft Beer Festival was happening down by the waterfront. I figured maybe a cold drink and a crowd would do me some good. That's where I saw her. She was there with someone. A guy. Tall, clean-cut, clearly more than just a friend. They looked good together. Elise spotted me and excused herself, walked over. "Ethan, hey," she said. "Do you have a minute?" Her boyfriend, to his credit, just smiled and said, "Take your time." "I'm sorry I never talked to you again," she said. But I was so angry and hurt. That night, after everything happened, I called my mom. She told me the truth. "You're spoiled, and you're running." And she was right. I nodded slowly. "Elise," I said, "I want to be mad at you, but I can't. Maybe your mom was right about you, but I think mine was right about me too. Lauren's betrayal hurt more than I ever expected. And I took it out on you. I didn't give you a chance." She gave me a sad smile. "You're a good man, Ethan, but you need help, real help. A counselor, a pastor, someone. I'm not the person who can fix you. I wish I were, I really do." "I hear you," I said, "and thank your boyfriend for letting us talk. You deserve someone who trusts you enough to give you that." She nodded. "Say hi to your mom for me, and tell her she raised a beautiful son." We walked away from each other, but as she turned, I saw the shimmer in her eyes. I had to look away before she saw the tears in mine. So where do you go when you need to hit reset? When you've been broken down and need to rebuild?" I went home, took 3 weeks off and flew back to Chicago. Time to play the prodigal son. Mom still lived in the old house on the north side, where we grew up. I was the only one of her kids who had moved away. My sister had 2 kids. My brother had 3, used to joke that his wife was a baby machine. 3 kids before 30. Mom was busy, but I knew she missed me, even if she always claimed I was the reason for her gray hair. On the second day, she invited everyone over for a feast. Lasagna me favorite and chocolate cheesecake. She went all out. I leaned into the role of the long-lost uncle, brought expensive electronic gifts the kids couldn't even use yet. Their parents rolled their eyes, but I could tell they appreciated it in their own way. After everyone left, Mom and I stood at the sink doing dishes. She wasn't big on giving advice. That had always been Dad's job, but she always knew what to say. "Hank Taylor still drops by sometimes," she said casually. "Asks about you. When's the last time you talked?" "Not as often as I should," I admitted. "And yeah, I know. It's probably on me." "Call him," she said. And I knew she was right. Hank had been my best friend since kindergarten. From Little League I pitched, I caught. Through middle school, high school, he was quarterback. I was wide receiver. We were inseparable. Until I let life and ego and pain get in the way. Maybe it was time to change that. I quit baseball my freshman year of high school, not because I didn't love the game, but because I was a mediocre hitter at best. Our gym teacher had noticed my form on the high jump and encouraged me to try out for track. Turned out, I had a natural gift for the pole vault. Football didn't last long either. My dad pulled me out after freshman year, afraid I'd get hurt and mess up any chance I had at a college scholarship in track and field. He wasn't wrong to be protective, but that decision had consequences not just for me, but for Hank, too. Our junior year, our football team almost made it to state. Hank was our quarterback, and I was his go-to receiver. We had chemistry, the kind you don't fake. That season could have been something special. But without me, his senior year, his stats tanked. His receivers were clumsy, dropping passes like they were allergic to the ball. He didn't get the football scholarship he'd been hoping for. Ended up with a baseball scholarship to Southern Illinois instead. And to his credit, he crushed it. Hank never blamed me. He knew how much pressure my father put on me to stay injury-free for the sake of college and maybe even Olympic dreams. And he never held a grudge. Not once. That was just the kind of guy he was. I did get into the University of Oregon, and I was on track for the Olympics. Then my pole snapped in half during warm-ups at the NCAA Finalsa 1-in-a-million accident. I fell awkwardly, shredded my knee, and just like that, it was over. 2 years of physical therapy got me back to 90%, but the moment had passed. I graduated with a degree and a settlement check, $250,000 from the pole manufacturer. Hank and I drifted after that. He stayed in Illinois, and I was on the West Coast. I was there when he married Melanie, and I saw him once after their second kid was born. But then life, work, and distance did what it always does. Still, when I called his house 2 years later, he picked up on the first ring. 30 minutes after I called, we were sitting in his backyard, drinking beer like no time had passed. We started with him. He'd become a Chicago firefighter, married to Melanie, 2 boys, Mark and Kevin. Solid guy, solid life. Then it was my turn. He already knew about the divorce Mom had told him, but not the details. He didn't flinch when I told him what Lauren had done, what Elise had done. He just nodded, took another sip, and waited for me to finish. When I did, I told him how hard it had become for me to trust people, anyone. It just feels like it's every man for himself now, I said. Hank stared at me for a long time before replying, "No, man. That's just because you've been surrounded by the wrong people for too long. Let me tell you something you don't know." He leaned back in his chair and looked at the sky. "For the 3 years you dated Sophie in high school," he said, "I had a crush on her." My eyes went wide. "Yeah," he said, smirking. "Didn't expect that, did you? But that's how it's supposed to be. A friend never touches another man's girl. Not ever." He went on. "Remember that weekend at my uncle's cabin in Door County? You had to work Friday, and my girlfriend at the time was Stacy. You and Stacy were coming up Friday night. Sophie and I went ahead to get things ready." "I remember," I said. "Yeah, except your car broke down in Milwaukee. You didn't show up until Saturday night. So Sophie and I, alone in a cabin, all night. She's still in a bikini from swimming, and then the power goes out. It's pitch black, just us and a couple candles and a bottle of cheap wine." I didn't say a word. "You know what happened?" he asked. I shook my head. "Nothing," Hank said. "Because I'm your friend. And more importantly, because Sophie was the kind of girl who would never cheat on her man." He leaned forward. "You went off to chase Olympic gold, and that's fine. You were chasing something huge. But along the way, you left behind people who would have gone to war for you. And you replaced them with people who only looked out for themselves. You didn't need better luck, Mark. You needed better company." I sat there, stunned, let it sink in, and then I asked the question that had been waiting quietly in the back of my mind. "Do you know where Sophie is now? Or what she's up to?" "I haven't seen her since that first Christmas after college," Hank said. "But I think about her too, sometimes. I came home during my freshman year at Oregon and asked about Sophie, or Ginny, as we used to call her. I hadn't seen her since that first Christmas break after high school. Hank told me she'd been in town a couple of months earlier. She's a widow now," he added quietly. "Has a 5-year-old son." That hit me like a punch. "What happened?" "Her husband's last tour in Afghanistan. He was shot. She didn't go into much detail, but he was decorated, won a couple medals for bravery." I sat with that for a long moment. "She's trying to hold it together for the kid," Hank said. "But you can tell she's barely hanging on. Still living in San Diego County, not far from the base. His unit looks out for her, the way they do for their own. But she'd probably be glad to hear from you. I've got her email if you want it." I hesitated, then asked something I immediately regretted. "Is she still sexy?" I looked over my shoulder to make sure Melanie wasn't within earshot. The storm door was shut. Hank narrowed his eyes. "Jesus, Ethan, what the hell happened to you?" I didn't answer. He kept going. "First of all, I would never cheat on Janice. And second, Ginny would never sleep with a married man. That's not who we are." Only Hank could say something like that and make it land. Make it cut deep enough to feel, but not deep enough to bleed. That night, I sat down at my laptop and wrote her an email. Hi, Sophie. Hank Taylor gave me your email address. I hope it's not inappropriate that I'm reaching out, but I'll be in San Diego this weekend, and I was wondering if you and your son might be open to lunch or dinner on Friday or Saturday just to catch up. Warm regards, Ethan. Early Tuesday morning, I got a reply. Short, kind, and very her. Ethan, it's so good to hear from you after all these years. Friday, lunch works for me and Kevin. Here's my address. I'll expect you at noon unless I hear otherwise. Your friend, Jenny. I smiled like a kid reading a note passed under a desk in middle school. Hank was on duty the rest of the week, but he invited me to swing by the firehouse and have lunch with the crew. I did. Saturday between two of his fellow firefighters and listened as they talked about the job, the danger, the bond. What struck me most wasn't the fire talk, it was the quiet understanding that trust was everything. You don't run into a burning building unless you know the guy behind you is going to pull you out. And that hit me in a way I didn't expect. Back in high school, I had left team sports, baseball, football, and thrown myself into track and field. Even though I was part of a team, my success depended solely on me. Pole vaulting was individual. There were no teammates to pass the ball or run interference. Same thing with Salisbury win or loss was mine alone. And the only team I'd tried to build since then? My marriage to Lauren. We all know how that ended. I landed in San Diego on Thursday, rented a car, and checked into a small place in Coronado. Friday morning, I drove north to Sophie's neighborhood, one of those tidy 4-unit townhouses just outside base housing. I stood on the porch, holding a bouquet of flowers like an awkward teenager, trying to shield them from a nosy neighbor peeking through a window across the street. When the door opened, I nearly dropped them. Sophie looked radiant. She wore a bright blue sundress, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail, and had a little boy clinging to one leg. Ethan, she said warmly, welcome. She stepped forward, put her hands behind my head, and kissed my cheek. Then she glanced at the flowers. Are these for me? She teased, grinning. I stood there like a fool, still frozen. Yes. I handed them over like they were made of glass. Thank you. Come in while I put these in water. I stepped inside, and she turned to her son. Kevin, this is Mr. Brooks. He's an old friend of mine from school before I met your dad. Kevin, maybe 5, stepped forward and extended his hand like a little gentleman. Hello, Mr. Brooks. Hi, Kevin, I said, shaking his hand gently. It's really nice to meet you. While Sophie arranged the flowers, I looked around the apartment. It was small but neat. Lived in, loved in. What caught my eye first was the folded American flag in a wooden display case, sitting front and center on a shelf. Next to it was a framed photo of a Marine. He looked proud, young, strong. Attached to the frame were 2 medals, a Purple Heart and a Navy Cross. That's my dad, Kevin said, his voice soft but steady. And just like that, I felt the air shift. I shifted my gaze to the other side of the folded flag, where another photo sat. Sophie Ginion the beach with her husband and a baby nestled between them. They looked relaxed, sunlit, and absolutely in love. At that moment, she stepped into the room. Ginny, I hope I'm not crossing a line, but this photo, it's beautiful. You 3, you looked so happy. You must miss him. She gave a small, wistful smile. You don't have to apologize. It's a good memory. And yes, we were madly in love. She walked over, eyes lingering on the image. We met at Northwestern. He was in ROTC. I was studying journalism. Most of my classmates rolled their eyes at the military, but Chucky was different. He had this steadiness to him. Strong, sure, and kind. Someone you could trust with your life. And that was everything to me. She blinked a few times, her eyes a little glassy, and then turned back toward me. Still up for lunch? Absolutely, I said. Let's make it happen. She smiled. Kevin, guess what? Mr. Brooks is taking us to Red Robin. Kevin whooped and bolted for the door. We piled into Ginny's car, no need to hassle with moving the car seat into my rental. During the drive, the mood lifted. Kevin kept us laughing with jokes. Only a 5-year-old could deliver with full sincerity. And by the time we pulled into the parking lot, the three of us were in good spirits. Lunch was easy, natural. Despite everything she'd been through, marriage, motherhood, widowhood, Ginny hadn't changed. She was still sharp, funny, grounded. There was something healing just being near her. About halfway through the meal, she looked at me across the table. "So, what brought you to San Diego? You never really said." I paused, glanced down, then figured there was no point in lying. "I came here to say something I should have said years ago. I owe you an apology for how I left things. You didn't deserve that. You were always honest with me, always good, and I just left. You were better to me than I ever was to you." She nodded slowly, letting it sit for a moment. "Well, thank you. That means more than you know." She sipped her drink. "So what now? Heading back to Portland?" "My flight's not until Sunday night. I'm planning to spend the next 2 days clearing my head, running on the beach, doing a little thinking." "Sounds like a plan," she said. Kevin was busy coloring on the kids' menu, blissfully unaware of the conversation happening over his head. When we got back to her place, she hesitated at the door. "Ethan, would you like to come to a barbecue at my friend's house tomorrow?" I laughed. "And skip an entire day of self-pity and overanalyzing my life? You're asking a lot." She grinned. "If you change your mind, be at my place by 11. Casual. Shorts, polo. Oh, hand, bring beer." I nodded. "I'll be there." I kissed her on the cheek, shook Kevin's hand like a gentleman, and drove back to my hotel. I couldn't stop smiling the entire way. Every reason I fell in love with her back in high school came rushing back. The next morning, the three of us headed out for the barbecue. Ginny wore white shorts and a fitted t-shirt, hair pulled back in a ponytail, aviators over her eyes. The shorts weren't too short, but they hinted at the athletic form she still had. The shirt dipped just enough to be noticed. Sexy but never trying too hard. That was always her way. As we approached a small group near the grill, most of them, clearly Marinesy, could feel their eyes on me. Assessing, measuring. I had the distinct impression this wasn't just a social gathering, it was a test. Were they sizing me up as a friend, or something more than a friend to Ginny? She introduced me, then drifted off to make sure Kevin was mingling with the other kids. At least, that was the reason she gave. I stayed behind. "I hope this doesn't sound cliché," I said, glancing around, "but thank you all for your service." One of them stepped forward, tall, commanding. "Captain Daniel Cruz," he said, offering his hand. "And no, it doesn't sound cliché. My dad served in Vietnam. When we walk down the street in uniform and someone says thank you, I see a light in his eyes. Wasn't like that when he came home, so it means something." After that, the conversation loosened up. We talked sports, bad coffee, and even worse, barracks food. I ended up in the kitchen at one point with the wives and girlfriends, swapping tips on seasoning ribs and balancing toddlers on your hip while cooking. By the end of the afternoon, I felt like I belonged. As I was loading a sleepy Kevin into his car seat, Ginny leaned over the door. "Well, did you pass?" "I think so," I said, smirking. "But I have a feeling Rachel Cruz will call you the minute I get to the tavern." She laughed. "And I'll probably get another call tomorrow after the guys report in." I looked at her for a long moment. For the first time in years, I didn't feel broken. "I hope you don't mind too much," Ginny said as we pulled up to her house. "It's just a really close-knit group. They look out for each other. I'll always be a part of that circle because of Chuck. He and Captain John Clayton were incredibly close in Afghanistan." I nodded, but my heart was pounding. I had to ask the question that had been sitting in the back of my mind all afternoon. "So, the fact that I'm being tested like this, does it mean you actually want to keep seeing me?" She paused, gave me a look that was both warm and steady. "Yes, Ethan. We've both changed since high school, but I still have something in my heart for you. If you want to keep seeing me, I'd really like that." I let the breath out slowly. "I'd like that too, Ginny. Let's see where it goes." She laughed, and I remembered all over again how much I loved the sound of her laugh. "It'll probably be late when I leave the tavern tonight. Can we see each other tomorrow, assuming I pass the test?" I teased. She grinned. "I usually go to Mass at 10. You can come with me or later, if that's more your speed." Then she looked me dead in the eyes. "When was the last time you went to church, Ethan?" I scratched the back of my neck. "Besides weddings and funerals, probably 10 years, maybe more." She didn't judge, just nodded. "I didn't stop believing," I added quietly. "I just stopped showing up." We got out of the car. Kevin had nodded off in his car seat. I carefully unbuckled him and carried him inside, up to his bed. Ginny stood in the hallway, watching me with a quiet smile on her face. There was something heavy and beautiful in that silence. I walked over to her, pulled her into a hug, and kissed her. She kissed me back. "See you tomorrow," I said. "I'll be here at 9:30. Wish me luck." I walked into the tavern and was greeted by 5 men, including Captain John Clayton. The bartender poured me a pint, and we all sat around a table together. John clearly led this group. He set the tone, and everyone followed. After a few sips of beer and light chatter, he leaned forward. "Ethan, we're not trying to make your life difficult," he said. "But you need to understand 3 of the guys sitting at this table, including myself and the bartender, Rodriguez. We all owe our lives to Chuck Turner. Did Ginny ever tell you anything about what happened?" "No," I said. "I saw the Navy Cross and the Purple Heart in her living room and knew it had to be serious, but I didn't press. I figured if she wanted to share it, she would." "Good instinct." John nodded. "You showed her respect. I appreciate that." Then he told me. They were on patrol in the mountains near the Pakistan border. 40 Taliban insurgents ambushed them. "We couldn't call in an airstrike," he said. "It would have triggered an avalanche. And we couldn't retreat, they had the high ground. Chuck made a call, ordered his men to flank the enemy while he and Rodriguez stayed back to hold their position, draw their attention. It took us 3 hours to circle around," John said. 3 hours of climbing rocks, keeping low, trying not to die. Chuck and Rhodey kept them busy the whole time. By the time the rest of the team managed to outflank the enemy and clear them out, Chuck was shot 4 times and still fighting. "He died in my arms," John said, his voice quieter now. "Rodriguez was unconscious, head wound and a shredded leg. That leg's gone now. He bartends here because active duty's not an option. That's why they looked after Ginny. That's why this wasn't just small talk or social courtesy. This was family." I nodded, took a moment, and then I looked John in the eyes. "I get it, I really do. Let me say this, ask Ginny about how I treated her when we dated. I never disrespected her, never cheated. My biggest mistake was letting her go. But maybe that worked out in a way it was supposed to. She met Chuck, and they had Kevin. That's a legacy that matters." I took a breath. I'm not the guy I was at 18. I wasn't ready back then. I probably wouldn't have been a great husband or father, but I've never raised a hand to a woman, not even when I caught my ex in bed with another man. I may not be military. I don't know what it's like to charge a gun nest, but I'm not a coward. If it came to it, I'd stand between Ginny and anything that meant to hurt her. I looked around the table. I've made selfish choices, yeah, but I see that now, and I'm working on it. Then I leaned forward. "So let me ask you, do I have your permission to keep seeing Ginny?" Some people might think that's over the top, asking grown men for permission to date a woman who can obviously make her own decisions. But I wasn't doing it for formality. I was doing it because they earned the right to care about her, and I wanted to show them that I respected that. It worked. John broke into a wide grin. The others followed. Rodriguez, behind the bar, called out, "Let's have something special." That night at the tavern, after the whiskey and the laughter, John told me something that explained a lot why Ginny hadn't been dating anyone seriously in a while. He said, "You weren't the first guy to come back into her orbit. About a year ago, she started getting close with another Marine." I listened. already sensing where the story was going. But Ginny couldn't do it, John continued. She tried, but in the end, she couldn't take the idea of dating another Marine seriously, not after losing Chuck. The guy Tom had been a lifer, born for the Corps. That wasn't a bad thing, but it was a trigger for her. Tom offered to leave the Marines for her, John said, and Ginny told him if he did, she'd never speak to him again. That floored me. She didn't want anyone giving up who they were for her, John added. So he transferred to Camp Lejeune not long after. They haven't spoken since. She's been casual ever since. Until she got your letter. He paused, as if weighing whether to say more, then smiled slightly. Doreen told me Ginny was excited that day. Like, really excited. Don't tell her I told you that. I won't, I said, but thank you. The next day, it all began in earnest. I started racking up serious Alaska air miles, flying between Portland and San Diego almost every weekend. Kevin got used to seeing me. Ginny welcomed me like no time had passed. But she wasn't ready for us to sleep together, not yet. Instead of burning money on hotel rooms, John and Doreen graciously let me stay in their guest room. I didn't complain. Honestly, the stability helped. I made it a point to be present to earn my place. I started working on myself. Even my boss back in Portland noticed a difference. I was less edgy, more grounded. I joined the company's softball team. Signed up for doubles tennis at the base, courts with Ginny as my partner. We were good together, in rhythm, on and off the court. On my 5th trip 3 months after that first lunch, I walked out of the terminal and climbed into Ginny's car. Kevin's car seat was missing. "Where's Kevin?" I asked. She smiled, eyes full of mischief. "Doreen and John are watching him this weekend. I have a surprise for you." She didn't say anything else, just merged onto the I-5 and drove north. We chatted about everything and nothing how. Kevin was disappointed he wouldn't see me until Sunday, how much he'd grown attached to me. I could hear the warmth in her voice when she said it. Eventually, we pulled into the parking lot at the La Jolla Beach and Tennis Resort. She stepped out of the car wearing that same blue dress from our first dinner, but this time, no bra underneath. She turned to me, smiling wide. "I think it's time. Don't you?" I didn't even answer, just leaned in and kissed her. "You know I've fallen in love with you again, right?" "Thank God," she whispered, "because I've been hoping for that since our first weekend." "I love you, Ginny." That weekend felt like the world stopped for us. We ordered room service, made love all Friday night. Funny thing, back in high school, we'd slept together for 2 of the 3 years we dated, so you think you know what to expect. But over a decade later, with life behind you and deeper emotion in front of you, it's a completely different experience. We weren't kids fumbling in the dark anymore. We knew what we wanted and how to give it. Saturday afternoon, we played tennis like nothing had changed. Saturday night, we made love again. Sunday morning, Ginny threw me a curveball. She drove us to the secluded nude beach beneath the cliffs at Torrey Pines. She kept her bikini bottoms, but took off her top without hesitation. I stared, trying not to look stunned. "How did you know about this place?" I asked. "Don't ask," she said with a grin. "Let's just say Doreen swore me to secrecy." "And now I'm sworn in too?" She laughed. "Welcome to the club." I worked up the nerve to drop my trunks for about 30 minutes, long enough to flirt with sunburn and feel very free. Then I put them back on. We even thought about joining a group playing volleyball, but decided maybe next time. Still, I joked that naked volleyball might be the ultimate team-building exercise. By early afternoon, we packed up and drove back to the Claytons. Kevin ran out to meet us, threw his arms around my legs and didn't let go. John greeted me with a handshake and a cold beer. Doreen gave me a knowing smile and a hug. We stayed for dinner, and Kevin never left my side. When it was time for me to head back to the airport, he looked at me with the kind of quiet sadness kids have when they don't want to say goodbye. And somewhere between the goodbye kiss and the wheels up on my flight back to Portland, I made a decision. 2 weeks later, Ginny and I returned to the Claytons for a Friday night drink. When John and I were alone in the backyard, I told him. I looked John in the eyes and told him, plain and simple, I'm going to ask Ginny to marry me unless you've got a reason I shouldn't." He didn't hesitate. "I'd be disappointed if you didn't," he said. "She's madly in love with you, man. And I can't think of a nicer guy or anything that would make her happier. That meant everything. Do you think she'd move to Portland?" John smiled. "Well, if she says yes, and you're open to it. She's mentioned to Doreen how much she misses her parents and siblings. If you moved back here, to the Chicagoland area, I think it'd mean the world to her." "I would," I said. "If she agrees, I'll make it happen." "And Kevin?" "I'm going to ask him first. Just him and me. Taking him to lunch tomorrow, keep your fingers crossed." John grinned. "You might be surprised. That kid loves you." The next day, Ginny gave me a puzzled look when I told her Kevin and I had guy errands to run. But she didn't press. I played it off as some bonding time, just two guys out in the world. We headed straight to Red Robin and slid into a booth. Kevin ordered his usual milkshake, and I did the same. Then I took a breath and asked the question. "Kevin, what would you say if I asked your mom to marry me? Would it be okay with you?" He sipped his milkshake, then looked at me with a grin. "That would be great, Mr. Brooks. My mom really likes you." "And what about you?" I asked, my voice soft. "Do you like me enough that I could live with you and your mom?" He nodded. "Yes." "Does that mean I'd be your father?" Kevin thought for a second. "Something like that. But no one could replace my real dad." I smiled. "That's exactly right. What did you call him?" "Daddy." I nodded. "How about this if your mom and I get married? You can call me Dad, but that doesn't mean you ever have to stop remembering him." Kevin smiled. "Okay, I'd like that." We got back to the house, and I knew there was no chance in hell he'd keep that secret, so I didn't wait. I already had the ring in my pocket. Kevin walked in ahead of me, carrying a bouquet of red roses. Ginny smiled when she saw them, a little confused but clearly touched. Then I dropped to one knee. "Ginny," I said, voice shaking just a little, "will you marry me?" Not original, not poetic, but it came from the heart. She didn't need time to think. She dropped to her knees and hugged me. "Yes, I love you, Ethan." Kevin hugged us both, though he forgot to drop the roses and managed to scratch my neck with a thorn. Still, that might have been the worst thing to happen in the years that followed, and I'll take that any day. My life with Ginny has been full of blessings. We got married 3 months after I proposed. By then, I had landed a great sales position with a tech startup just north of Chicago. Close enough to both our families. Old friends. A new beginning. Kevin now has a younger brother and a sister. All 3 kids call me Poppy, 'cause that's what Kevin started calling me. And it just stuck. Ginny? She still looks incredible, even after 3 kids. We still play doubles tennis. And don't tell anyone, but we've even learned how to play volleyball and sneak in a game or two at Black's Beach every time we visit the Claytons. Last May, our family took a trip to Washington, meeting up with John and Doreen. We did the usual sightseeing with the kids, but on Memorial Day, we visited Captain Charles Turner's grave at Arlington. It had been 10 years since Chuck was taken from his wife and son. It was a dark, heavy, proud day. I was so grateful John and Doreen were there to help support Kevin and Ginny. The weight of it lingered for a few days, quiet, deep, but it was the right thing to do. To honor a man who had lived and died with purpose. To honor anyone in the military, police, or fire service who knowingly faces the possibility of giving everything for others. We came back home. Life settled into its normal rhythm again. The medals, the flag, the photograph of Chuck, those still sit proudly on the bookcase. We don't pretend he didn't exist. We remember him. We honor him. As for me, I'm just glad I finally opened my eyes and learned what trust really means. Even Hank stopped threatening to kick my sorry, as though he still curses every time I ignore a cutoff man during our softball games. I tell him I got distracted by the beautiful blonde in the stands, the one with 3 kids yelling, "Go, Pop!" He rolls his eyes. I grin. My life? Yeah, it's good.